The wedding coordinator's perfume, something floral and expensive, suddenly smelled wrong as Candace's voice cut through the chapel like broken glass. My fingers went numb around Daniel's hand. The pastor's mouth hung open mid-sentence, frozen on the word peace. "This is absolutely insane." My sister rose from the third pew, navy silk catching the stained glass light. "Grace, stop! You're making the biggest mistake of your life." 143 people I'd counted every RSVP turned in their seats. The ancient pews creaked in unison. My mother's face drained of color. Someone's phone buzzed inappropriately loud in the sudden silence. Candace's heels clicked against stone as she stepped into the aisle. "You're marrying a waiter. A waiter, Grace. Have you completely lost your mind?" My throat tightened, but not with shame. With something else entirely. Because standing beside me, wearing a perfectly tailored suit and that patient smile I'd fallen in love with, was Daniel Rivera, heir to one of the largest restaurant empires on the East Coast. The man she'd just humiliated owned more generational wealth than her hedge fund husband had leveraged in his entire career. And she had no idea. I squeezed Daniel's hand twice, our signal, not yet. "My name is Grace, I'm 32, and I teach American literature at a public high school. This is the story of how my sister's cruelty became her greatest teacher. Candace and I grew up sharing everything. A bedroom in our small New Hampshire colonial, secrets whispered after lights out, dreams sketched in matching journals. But somewhere between her acceptance to NYU and my scholarship to Princeton, our paths diverged like tree roots seeking different soil. She chased penthouses and champagne. I found contentment in lesson plans and coffee shop grading sessions. When she married Brandon Wells, a hedge fund manager 15 years her senior, our father actually teared up at the reception. "She made it," he whispered to me, champagne glass raised. "She really made it out." I stood there in my bridesmaid dress from David's bridal, student loan statement stuffed in my apartment drawer, wondering what exactly we'd been trying to escape. That's when Candace started looking at me differently, like I was a cautionary tale in comfortable shoes. The comments started small. "Still driving the Camry? How practical." Then sharper. "I admire how you live so simply, Grace. It must be so freeing not to care about appearances." I never argued, just smiled, drank my water, changed the subject. But when I told her about Daniel after we'd been dating for 8 months, something in her expression actually frightened me. "You're dating a waiter." She didn't ask. She pronounced it like a diagnosis. "He's a restaurant manager," I corrected. "With your education, with our family name." She set down her wine glass hard enough that the stem cracked. "Grace, I thought you at least had some self-respect left." What she didn't know, what no one knew except Daniel and me, was that he wasn't just managing tables and inventory. Daniel Rivera was the only son of the late Rafael Rivera, founder of Rivera Hospitality Group, 12 high-end restaurants, 5 boutique hotels, private dining clubs that required 3-year waiting lists. But Daniel had made his father a deathbed promise: learn every job from the bottom up before assuming control. So after graduating from Cornell's School of Hotel Administration, he'd traded his corner office for grease-stained aprons and 12-hour shifts on his feet. "The moment I forget what it's like to mop a floor," he told me on our third date, "is the moment I lose the right to lead anyone." I fell in love with him right there, between the appetizer and entree. We'd agreed to keep his background quiet. "Let them judge," he'd said. "It'll make the truth that much more powerful." In the months before our wedding, Candace's campaign intensified. She cornered my mother with warnings about financial instability. She called my Aunt Linda to suggest saving the plane ticket. She convinced 2 cousins that I was having some kind of quarter-life crisis and needed an intervention, not encouragement. My mother showed me the texts. "She's throwing away her potential. Someone needs to stop this before it's too late." But I didn't break, because Daniel wasn't the gamble she imagined. He was the truth she'd trained herself not to recognize. That authentic work mattered more than impressive titles. That character outweighed credit scores. That the man who chose humility over ego was worth more than all of Brandon's leveraged assets combined. She'd understand soon enough, in front of everyone. Now, standing at the altar with my sister's voice still echoing off the chapel walls, I felt Daniel's thumb brush across my knuckles. Steady, unhurried. "Grace, please." Candace moved closer, her expression shifting from outrage to something that almost looked like concern. "Don't come crying to me when you're clipping coupons in some studio apartment above a pizza shop." My father stood halfway, his hand outstretched. "Candace, that's enough." "No, Dad, someone has to say it." She turned to address the entire congregation now, arms spread wide. "This is what happens when we let sentiment override sense, when we pretend love conquers all. It doesn't. Bills conquer all. Reality conquers all." The pastor cleared his throat. "Perhaps we should." "I'm leaving," Candace announced. "I can't watch this." She spun on her heel, navy silk swirling like a cape, and marched down the aisle. The chapel doors groaned shut behind her with Gothic finality. Silence pressed against my eardrums, then my grandmother's voice, clear as a bell. "Well, thank God that's over. Continue, Pastor." Nervous laughter rippled through the pews. The tension cracked. Daniel turned to me fully, his eyes shining with that particular mischief I'd learned to recognize. "Still want to marry me?" he whispered. "More than ever," I whispered back. The rest of the ceremony unfolded like something sacred. Our vows felt deeper without her presence poisoning the air. When the pastor pronounced us husband and wife, the applause thundered off the vaulted ceiling. Daniel kissed me softly, then grinned against my lips. "Ready for Act 2? Outside, October sunlight painted everything gold. Guests threw dried lavender as we walked through them toward the vintage Rolls-Royce idling at the curb. The leather interior smelled rich and worn, the engine purring like a satisfied cat. "Nice rental," I teased, as Daniel helped me arrange my dress. "Actually, it's from my personal collection." He caught my eye in the rearview mirror. "One of 3. I laughed, resting my head on his shoulder as the Vermont countryside blurred past, trees aflame with autumn, mountains standing witness. "You think she'll come to the reception?" "Oh, absolutely." Daniel's voice carried certainty. "Candace wouldn't miss a chance to judge our centerpieces and sniff at the dessert table. She probably thinks we're serving grocery store cake and boxed wine." I watched the landscape transform outside our window, expensive homes giving way to estates, then to something beyond even that. She has no idea what's waiting. Daniel kissed my temple. "She will in about 20 minutes. The Rivera Grand Reserve sat atop Harrington Bluff like a crown jewel, its limestone facade catching the late afternoon sun and throwing it back in gold. Most Bostonians knew the name from magazine spreads and society pages. Almost none had been inside. It wasn't on open table. You couldn't call for reservations. The place existed by invitation only, and that afternoon it existed solely for us. Our car pulled up to the entrance where valets in white gloves waited. Through the shuttle bus windows, I watched our guests' faces shift from confusion to recognition to disbelief. "Wait, is this the Rivera Grand?" Someone behind us, voice pitched with shock. "How did they possibly—" Daniel helped me from the car, his hand steady at the small of my back. He wore the same calm expression as always, but I knew him well enough now to see the anticipation dancing behind his eyes. He'd waited 3 years for this moment, not to flaunt anything, but to reveal what humility had been hiding all along. The doorman bowed and pulled open the massive glass doors. Inside, the air smelled of rosemary and Meyer lemon. Crystal chandeliers, each one worth more than my annual salary, reflected light off white marble floors. Servers in formal attire moved like dancers between guests, carrying champagne flutes and hors d'oeuvres plated like gallery art. The effect was immediate. Conversations died mid-sentence. Footsteps slowed. My second cousin, Margaret, actually gasped, hand flying to her mouth. This wasn't just elegant. This was elite. The kind of elite that required old money, serious connections, or both. Far too elite for a teacher, impossibly elite for a waiter. Then came the click, click, click of familiar heels. Candace arrived 20 minutes late, as always, her confidence preceding her through the doors. She scanned the space with practiced nonchalance until her gaze snagged on the chandeliers, the marble, the servers, the sheer impossible luxury of it all. Her steps faltered. There must be some mistake, she said, loud enough for nearby guests to hear. The Rivera Grande doesn't do weddings. She crossed directly to me, that strange tight smile on her face. Grace, sweetheart, what is this place? Did Daniel's boss pull some strings? Call in a favor? Before I could answer, a voice behind me said smoothly, "No strings, no favors, just family." Daniel stepped beside me, perfectly at ease in his tailored suit, his posture relaxed but commanding. Candace blinked at him. "I thought you worked at Trattoria Bella in Cambridge." "I do, still cover shifts there sometimes." Daniel's smile never wavered. "Great kitchen, learned a lot from their pasta chef." "Then how?" She gestured helplessly at the opulence surrounding us. "This is the Rivera Grande. Only the family can book this space, and they don't even take." "That's right," Daniel said gently. "Only family can book it." The realization moved across her face in stages: confusion, doubt, then dawning horror. "Rivera," she whispered, as in Rivera Hospitality Group. "Daniel!" A new voice cut through the tension, deep, accented, carrying the weight of decades. Heads turned as an elderly man approached, his silver hair perfectly combed, his navy suit crisp despite his age. He walked with a cane, but his presence made everyone else in the room feel smaller. "Grandfather." Daniel's entire face lit up. They embraced, the old man gripping his grandson's shoulders with obvious affection. Alfonso Rivera turned to me next, taking my hand and kissing it with old-world courtesy. "So this is the woman who convinced my stubborn grandson to stop hiding in kitchen corners. Grace, you're even more lovely than your photographs." Then he turned to Candace. His expression didn't harden exactly, but it cooled. "And you must be the sister. I heard you made quite a scene at the church." Candace's champagne flute slipped from her fingers. The crystal shattered against marble, but the sound seemed distant, muffled. No one moved to help. Every eye in the vicinity locked onto her face. "I didn't," her voice cracked. "I didn't know." That my grandson was more than a server. Alfonso's tone remained gentle, which somehow made it worse. "Yes, I gathered that from your objection. You told 200 people he wasn't good enough for your sister because of his job title." "I was trying to protect Grace," Candace managed. "I thought." "You thought his job defined his worth." Alfonso's eyes, still sharp at 83, held hers. "It's a common mistake, a shallow one, but common." The silence pressed against us like physical weight. Guests who'd witnessed Candace's chapel outburst now stood witness to this. The sister who'd mocked a waiter discovering she'd humiliated an heir. Then Daniel did something that made me fall in love with him all over again. He reached out his hand toward Candace. "Stay," he said quietly. "Enjoy the evening. There's enough room here for everyone, if they're willing to see people for who they are, not what they do for a living." Candace stared at his outstretched hand like it might burn her. Around us, I heard gasps, whispers, the rustle of expensive fabric as people leaned toward each other. "After everything I said," her voice barely functioned. "Especially because of it," Daniel said. "Grace taught me that grace isn't deserved, it's given." For a long moment, Candace didn't move. Then slowly, she took his hand. Her mascara had started to run, I noticed, the first crack in her perfect facade. "I'd like that," she whispered, "if you'll have me." Alfonso cleared his throat, the sound of a man redirecting a room's energy with practiced ease. "Then perhaps we can move past the drama and let these two enjoy their first dance." As Daniel led me to the center of the floor, the orchestra, yes, we had a full orchestra, began to play. I glanced back once and caught Candace standing alone near a pillar, watching us with an expression I'd never seen on her face before. Not anger, not judgment, something softer, more lost. The reveal wasn't the punishment. The kindness after it, that was what would change everything. 10 months later, everything fell apart, not for us, for Candace. It started with Candace's panicked phone call at 6 a.m. She'd just heard from Brandon's lawyer. Federal agents were already at their Beacon Hill brownstone with boxes and warrants. Within hours, news vans lined their street. Insider trading, securities fraud. Evidence that Brandon had been running a scheme for 6 years, trading on confidential information, falsifying documents, involving clients who'd trusted him with their retirement funds. The house went into foreclosure. The cars were seized. Candace's credit card stopped working mid-transaction at Whole Foods. She called me from the parking lot, voice shaking. "They took everything, Grace. Everything." Brandon was arrested that same week. The trial moved quickly. The evidence was overwhelming. 6 months later, he was convicted on 14 counts and sentenced to 12 years in federal prison. Candace filed for divorce the day after his sentencing, and it was finalized within 3 months. 3 days after Brandon's arrest, that Thursday night, she showed up at our brownstone in the Back Bay drenched in rain and designer silk, mascara tracking down her face. We'd kept our place modest despite Daniel's wealth, his choice, one I'd agreed with completely. We didn't need marble countertops to be happy. "Brandon's lawyers say I'm not implicated," Candace said from our couch, hands wrapped around tea she wasn't drinking. "But everything we owned is evidence or collateral. The apartment above the gallery, my car, the timeshare in Aruba." She laughed, the sound cracking. "I don't even know how to start over. I've never had to." Daniel set his laptop aside and leaned forward. "There's an apartment above our Cambridge restaurant. Studio, nothing fancy, but it's clean and safe. Good neighborhood." Candace's eyes went wide. "You do that? After how I—" "One condition," I said gently. "You work in the restaurant, not in an office, not behind a desk. You start where Daniel started. Dish pit, prep station, tables, closing shifts, all of it." The silence stretched long enough that I heard our kitchen faucet dripping. "You want me to be a waitress," Candace said flatly. "I want you to learn what real work feels like," Daniel corrected. "What it means to earn respect instead of buying it. What your sister has known her entire life, that your value isn't in your address or your husband's portfolio." Candace stared at us both. "This is punishment." "No." I moved to sit beside her. "This is an opportunity, the kind you never gave anyone else, including yourself." She was silent for so long I thought she'd refuse. Then, "Okay." Barely a whisper. "I'll do it, but I don't know how to be good at anything real." "You'll learn," Daniel said, standing. "Everyone does, eventually." She moved in the following Tuesday with 2 suitcases and no staff to unpack them, traded Chanel for black non-slip shoes and a stained apron. On her first shift, she dropped an entire tray of water glasses in the middle of dinner rush and cried in the walk-in freezer for 20 minutes. But she showed up the next day, and the day after that. Humility isn't something you can fake or purchase. You earn it in sweat, silence, and sore feet. For the first time in her adult life, Candace was earning something that mattered. I visited after 6 months. The Cambridge location buzzed with pre-dinner energy. Orders firing, pans clattering, that particular music of a kitchen in sync. And there at the expo station stood Candace, hair in a tight bun, sleeves rolled, no jewelry except her watch. She called out orders with confidence, balanced 3 plates on one arm, moved like someone who'd finally found their rhythm. "She's good," the sous chef told me, nodding toward her. "Really good. Doesn't complain, doesn't cut corners. Staff actually likes her." After closing, we sat in a back corner booth. Daniel slid a folder across the table. "How would you feel about managing this location?" he asked. Candace froze, fork halfway to her mouth. "Manage? You'd trust me with that?" "You've earned it," I said. 6 months, perfect attendance, worked every position, learned the systems. The staff respects you. That matters more than any business degree. Her eyes filled. "I used to think success meant being envied," she whispered. "Now I know it's being respected, for who you are when nobody's watching." She took the job. Within a year, the Cambridge location's revenue increased 22%. She instituted staff training programs, improved retention, created a culture where people wanted to work, not because she demanded it, but because she'd learned it herself, from the bottom up. At the next family gathering, she wore her Rivera manager's shirt like armor, not designer silk, not status symbols, just honest work, honestly earned. Dad approached her carefully like she might break. Candace, honey, are you happy? She looked at him for a long moment. I am now. For the first time in years, I actually am. No one laughed, because she wasn't a punchline anymore. She was proof that people could change if they were willing to get their hands dirty and their hearts open. Later that evening, she found me on the porch, sat beside me without speaking for a while, both of us watching fireflies in the yard. Thank you, she finally said, for not giving me what I deserved. I took her hand. You're my sister. You deserved a chance to become who you actually are. And who's that? Someone real, I said. Finally. She squeezed my hand. We sat there until the stars came out, two sisters who'd traveled very different roads to arrive at the same place, understanding that the best version of yourself is the one you build, not the one you buy. Before you go, here's a quick bonus for sticking around. If you love learning and growing like I do, you need to try audiobooks. I've got an exclusive deal with Audible. Your first month is completely free. That's access to over 500,000 titles, zero cost to you. All the details are waiting in the description. Don't miss this one.